once you release something into the public domain, the public is, better or worse, is free to interpret it, use it any way they want. And I've heard a lot of people say they love the big stage. A lot of people said they didn't even go hardly to the big stage. They just did meetings. A lot of people did a lot of the fun things. They found it fun. So you just have to accept the fact, I think, if you're me, that, you're going to put on the best meeting you possibly can, and it's going to mean different things to different people, and different people are going to utilize it in different ways. But to me, in the end of the day, as long as everybody said I had a good time and I'm coming back next year, I guess in the end of the day, it's a big success. Hello, everyone. Brian Colao here, director of the Dykema DSO Industry Group, and this is the DSO Technology Show. I've got my co-host, Matt McGaw, here with me, and welcome, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well here. It's middle of the summer. We just finished Dykema, and I think, Matt, this was actually this special segment. I'm going to call on you to sort of start this. You wanted to kind of talk a little bit about post-Dykema and Dykema. So, maybe just give us a couple thoughts of this was your idea for this special episode, and, what were you thinking here?
Wrote an article on my LinkedIn newsletter about, my takeaways from the event. And I don't think anybody has really provided access to you after a Dykema event to get your thoughts on from your seat, running around, doing so many things inside of what you do at Dykema, like how you feel that it went, like what your expectations were for the event and what some of the feedback was. So I think just a conversation around that today would be awesome for the people to hear.
Well, I guess careful what you wish for, because here's the thing. I'm happy, I love talking about Dykema, and I'm happy to talk about the event and maybe my thoughts. And I think you had a couple questions for me about that. But I also got your article here, okay? And I don't know what you were thinking. You did this article on LinkedIn. This is the thing for everybody watching. Look, Matt's now become very important in the industry, and now he writes these articles. And I got some questions about some things you put in this article. I guess we can go over that in a little bit, but maybe you want to just generally talk about the event first. Then, I kind of got to, question you about a few things in this article.
Well, yeah, since you're doing that, maybe I should talk to you about, all of your comments in this magazine as well. And
well, hold that up better. I don't think everybody saw enough of that. You might want to hold that up. Yeah, there you go. If you're going to do it, Matt,
where was this?
Don't threaten it. Do it. I like that issue. I'm happy to look. If you got any questions, I'm happy to talk about that issue also.
Where were you? Outside? Where was this picture taken?
Yeah, that was in Chicago. We were there for the midwinter meeting, and Laura, is incredible. Laura, set up a photo shoot, and she did this across from between the Ritz-Carlton and the old ADA building is where we ended up having it, and it was in a park over there by the art museum. Very nice area. It just was particularly cold at that time, and I was rather uncomfortable. I didn't really have my jacket on, and I don't know, I think you off camera were saying, you don't look like you're smiling. I was cold. I kind of wanted to put my coat on and go back inside, but I like it. I like the way the picture came up, but I was cold. The backstory is I was starting to get real cold and didn't have a jacket on. It was February in Chicago.
Phenomenal. The article was good. I read it. We're happy to go into mine. And I think in general, just to talk about my article, and before you give me shit on it, I think your meeting has turned into, whether that's been intentional or not. I think it was intentional last year because there was a Tuesday AI event, right? That was in the afternoon last year, like as AI was really starting to kick off. But I think the cheat code for those that are listening is like, you get in on Tuesday, have a nice day of meetings kind of when people have their guard down on Wednesday, and then Thursday is just like crazy busy, content on stage, meetings, and then Friday, and this is probably a part you're going to give me a hard time about, is a little lighter. And that being said, the room's still full, but it seems like it's front loaded versus back loaded, like maybe it used to be.
Well, I mean, look, if you start at the beginning, with sort of my thoughts on the whole thing, we set an attendance record, and I was unsure if we were going to, because this has been a tough year, Matt, for budget cuts and things. And, I knew we were going to have 2,300, which is wonderful. It's the largest event in the world for DSOs, even at that number. But remember, last year, 25 now, I guess now last year's 26, but for 25, we had about 2,400 or so. And I was like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do it. And then we had 182 people register at the door, and we actually broke our record by a handful. We broke our record from the year before. So we set an attendance record, which was really a surprise for me. Some years I expect to do it, but this was a tough year. So I was really proud that we set the attendance record, and it was I think a big success. I mean, the feedback has been really, really good. But, it's different things to different people, I learned. And this is the thing, to me, we always say best content, best networking, most fun. And you kind of got to live with that. What I mean by you got to live with that is some people choose to network. You were very disturbingly off camera for everybody listening, telling me before I got here, well, I hardly saw any content. I was taking all these meetings. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I guess when you create something, it's almost like I'm a big fan of Stephen King. And I read many of his novels, like dozens and dozens of them. He's been writing for 50, 60 years. He says, when I release a novel, I maybe have my own thoughts about it, but once I put it into the public, people are free to interpret it or use it any way they want. And I remember Stephen King was saying, like, he was attending secretly. He snuck into like a lecture at Harvard or something in Boston, and he was listening to the professor talk about like one of his novels, and he was like, I didn't mean any of that. Like, that wasn't it. And at one point, it was very famous. Like, he made a comment like in the class, and everybody laughed. And the professor looked at him and said, "How dare you? You don't get to tell me how to interpret your novel." And he said, when he thought about it, that's right. Once you release something into the public domain, they're going to interpret it or use it any way they want. And I guess that's sort of like my meeting. A lot of people told me they didn't attend, and does it like hurt my feelings a little bit because I put so much time and effort into the stage content? I mean, like a little bit, but you have to understand everybody that maybe did networking and didn't attend, the big stage said to me, "We loved it, Brian. I mean, don't be bothered. Like, we loved it. We had all these meetings. We're coming back next year. We can't wait to come back next year." But maybe, the big stage wasn't their thing, or maybe some people really loved the big stage and sat in on every last session and maybe did less meetings. And, there's always the couple people you and I laugh at them, Matt, where they're like, the village party animal. They're just
Yeah,
going to dance to the spasmatics and
right.
run around and get drunk. And I'm not sure what the hell they did besides run around and get drunk and go to the club. But they told me they're coming back next year too. So once you release something into the public domain, the public is, better or worse, is free to interpret it, use it any way they want. And I've heard a lot of people say they love the big stage. A lot of people said they didn't even go hardly to the big stage. They just did meetings. A lot of people did a lot of the fun things. They found it fun. So you just have to accept the fact, I think, if you're me, that, you're going to put on the best meeting you possibly can, and it's going to mean different things to different people, and different people are going to utilize it in different ways. But to me, in the end of the day, as long as everybody said I had a good time and I'm coming back next year, I guess in the end of the day, it's a big success. It's a huge, I feel like it's a huge success. And you wrote this article, Matt. I'm looking at this thing here, and you should have known if you're going to write this kind of thing, you were going to have to answer to me. So, I mean, we'll just take up a couple things here. In fact, everybody, well, I'm going to put my reading glasses on because I really want to make sure I got this correctly. But like, what is this about? Like 4 days, because this conference has quietly shifted to Tuesday through Thursday night. I'll give you that. It's become a big deal. Like, people come Monday. There's tons of meetings. A lot of people report to me they get some of their best networking done. Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday during the day. So I agree with that. That was okay. But then it goes, which means the Friday session turns into a mass exodus home, even when they pull in Nick Saban, arguably the best coach in college football history. Well, I did pull in Nick Saban. He was very expensive. We lined him up, and it was a full standing room only room. So, like, what are you thinking when you write this stuff?
I'm thinking you're probably not going to read it. number
Well, I
one.
read it.
That's the first thing I'm thinking. But listen, I was there, so I was one of the people, of many people, the thousands that were still there. I think what's interesting is like even there was folks that I tried to meet with on Friday. They were like, "No, we're heading out early." Yet when I peeked in to see what Nick Saban's crowd was like, I still think people were standing in the back. So
Well, I mean,
even with
I think the truth is that ballroom holds 16, 1700. Like if we ever had everybody that came to the event in the ballroom, I don't think we could do it. I don't think the fire marshal would let us. But like we've been talking about, like every single human being doesn't really go in there, at every given time. The closest we have is sort of like my walkout sequence. That's the closest we
yeah,
have to
which
like
was
maximum
nuts.
capacity. But past that, we don't. But when you have 26 total 100 people, which we had almost, I think, 2,600 people there, you can lose 1,000 and still have a packed ballroom. So I mean, the reality is, I do think, I don't like to talk about it, but some people had to go on Friday, and I think we're leaving mass exodus. Come on, choose your words better than that. Nobody mass exodus is our meeting. They like our meeting. They like with great sadness. Maybe they got to catch their plane, but it's not like they're running out there like some rocket ship out there. I mean, you gotta look. I mean, I know you got a big following now, but like let's stop the National Enquirer stuff if we can do that. What about this one for everybody listening to this? To me, there wasn't much at Dykema that felt new. Like, do you think about these statements before you make them? I had a movie. I commissioned a movie, a 30-minute movie. We'd never seen that before. I spent like a lot of
That's
effort
not
on
what I'm
this.
talking about.
Well, okay, well, go ahead. All right, this is like your show too. What are you talking about? Like,
I'm not.
explain yourself
Look, the
here,
movie
because
thing is one thing we should definitely talk about because that I was 100% in there for your opener, and then the movie, which I have questions about that. But let me defend myself. I am in technology like every single day, so
right.
for others, there probably was a lot of things that were new. I actually talked to Keith Miller. You know Keith. He goes to your
I know Keith
conferences.
very well. Yeah.
Last week he's like, man, there was just so much new, and I thought that was an interesting comment because I just literally wrote that there was nothing new. For me, I think there was so much new AI stuff the past year that there's a little bit of numbness to what I see, and everyone knows it's out there. And now it's less about like what the new flashy AI things are, and it's more about, in my opinion, like instead of what it does, like how we can get it to work inside DSOs, inside practices. So like there was nothing super new and flashy from a technology
So your
perspective.
comments like, look, I'm Mr. Big Technology Dog now, so it's not new to me, but like, all right, I mean, I got it. You do know a lot about, I'll give you that. I mean, you are an expert on technology. I think you should be a little more humble, Matt, than that. We worked hard to do it. I mean, if the question is, do you know a lot about technology? You do, but I think there was some new stuff there. Okay. I do think some of your other comments in this article were pretty good. Were pretty good. Like you said, a DSO leader I met said something like every sales pitch is like the same right now. It feels like AI enabled this that provides XYZ that in chat GBT or Claude type
Yeah.
language. I mean, it is a little bit that, AI was the new craze. Then it was agentic AI. Now it's a little bit vibe coding and things like that. But everybody does have an AI solution. And we had a panel about this. Now, of course, you didn't go to it because you claimed you were at all these meetings. So you missed all the
I
content
was
that I put
busy.
on stage. But we had a really good panel. Mackenzie Fagan was on there from Pearl, and AJ Acerno from, Smile Brands was on there. And I believe Lane Terrio from Independence was there. And my partner, Zach Hord, I think, moderated the thing. And we were talking about the difference between value added AI and just shiny objects. And they spent, a good 30 minutes sort of talking about it. And I got really good feedback on that panel. But that was sort of addressing this comment that, you heard that everything feels the same. And how do you differentiate value added from shiny objects?
Some of the decks look exactly the same, and you're seeing it on LinkedIn. I mean, Claude's got a great option to where it can build, really interesting, presentations and proposals. I'm guilty of using them myself, but this particular CEO I was talking to that made that comment is like every single thing I see is the exact same. The formatting's the same, and it's like this is gonna, change your world. It's gonna increase revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So that the pitches are getting like super stale. And I think one thing that was new just at the conference as a whole that I thought was interesting is like Ophir had that podcast that was set up. Like Weave had an interesting room where they were doing panels. You know, HS1 had vibe coding. So there was like the main stage, like amazing content, and then like separate little subsections of also interesting stuff besides just the networking, which wasn't technology specific, but like conference specific. And I don't know if that was intentional by you or just kind of happened naturally.
Yeah, no, I mean there was intentionality that I wanted people to do it, but then, you've got to rely on the particular, if it's a vendor or partner to execute on it. I mean, but yes, I mean, like for example, Pearl had that, like I called it like the torture chamber, but that was cool. That visual white thing where everybody was going, and it looked kind of cool. It was just when you go in there, it was an assault of white or something. Pearl was conducting interviews or podcasts and things in there. I thought that was great. I mean, and that took on a life of its own. There also was like a side room with a stage where they were doing stuff that took on a life of its own, and people liked it. There was some vibe coding, going on. Like HS1 had some things over there, took on a life of its own. People were, attending that independently and sort of doing that. There were several other. I had John Stampier doing, interviews of everybody getting off stage. That took on a life of its own. Plus, he snagged some other folks. So there were sort of ancillary, like little technology mini workshops, informal workshops going on, throughout the event, and they had pretty significant followings. And you never know exactly how it's going to turn out, but it was intentional. And as much as we wanted them there, I knew about it, I approved it all, but it ended up being a bigger hit. You had the Glow Lab, as always, totally sold out, everybody getting their teeth whitened in the Glow Lab. That's been now, I think, almost 3 or 4 years running. I can't remember, but that's a big hit. Always a big hit. People going into, the Glow Lab as well. So, yeah, these little sort of side stages, if you would, off the main stage are really, picking up significant followings.
Yeah. To your point about different folks have different ideas on how they're going to get value out of the conference. It's just giving more people options to ingest material however they feel it. If they like the big, like I think back to, going to college, like the lecture hall versus like a more of a smaller, intimate setting. And then also outside the classroom, the ability to network, having some different value adds like headshots, teeth whitening. It touches everybody, certainly, and I think it's been awesome. One question that you alluded to earlier, the video. After I watched the video, and for those that weren't there, it was just this like almost 30-minute documentary on the history of the DSO industry. And I met with a few folks that were in the video, like Mitch Olin afterwards and Doug Brown, like talking to them about their memories of it. I walked outside of the event hall and saw vendors sitting down at their booths. Like, I understand that was their job, but it's like I feel like everybody should have been inside. It should be a requirement that anybody that gets into DSO sales, onboarding, implementation, whatever it may be, should like watch this video. Like, maybe comment on that, how it took to make it, and then also maybe what you're doing with it.
Yeah, well, there ain't going to be another one. Remember when, like, those boxers, like, there ain't going to be no rematch. There ain't going to be no rematch. I've never spent as much time of any project as I have on that, like, in my law career, like, period. That goes back to, like, trials and other things I used to do in front of the court. Yeah, which were a lot of work and everything. I don't think I've ever spent more work on any single project than I spent on that movie. It's 31 minutes. It's called Journey Through DSO History. There's 13 chapters. It begins when the very first dentist walked the earth in ancient Egypt, Second Dynasty, all the way up to right before the 2026 conference. It covers, the very first DSO 1.0 that was litigated out of existence, filed bankruptcy. It covers DSO 2.0, the regulatory challenges that occurred with there. It covers DSO 3.0. Then it covers, sort of the market conditions and challenges we're in right now, plus the age of innovation and technology and what the future of DSOs would look like. I thought it came out great, and we showed it on the big screen. And yeah, a lot of vendors said they want to use it for training. They want to see it. A lot of what I call the OGs, the old, like exactly Mitch Olins and people. It brought back memories because they were a part of this history. Everything literally that we were talking about, they were present for. And, I think some of them even got a little bit sentimental, remembering, a lot of a lot of these things. I was watching it backstage for a few minutes with Dr. Rick Workman, and I think it was bringing back a lot of memories because he was instrumental in defeating some of the anti DSO legislations and rules that they were trying to come out with in 2012, 13, and 14. And, Dr. Workman was like just nodding his head. I was watching him backstage and he's looking at some of the frames in, the movie, and he's just like nodding his head like he remembered, all of these things vividly, that were sort of, occurring. And what we're doing right now is, it was very expensive to produce. This was not a cheap thing. This was a very expensive project. We are formatting it for the small screen. I may like have an encore showing. I mean, obviously you're not going to repeat it. We're not going to show it again to open the event next year, but I may sometime next year at Dykema have like an encore showing, maybe when the big stage ends on the first day. If people want to grab a beer and come back, we'll do like an encore showing because there's nothing like it on that 110-foot screen. But between now and next year's Dykema, we are formatting it right now for the small screen. There's actually a lot of work. There was a lot of work to get it to be like this rectangle so it could go on that big screen. Now we're formatting it for a more like your phone or like a laptop or something like that. And, that'll be done in a couple weeks, and we're going to make it available, for people that want to see it, because there's been just incredible interest, in people wanting to do like a redo and see that movie, or people that missed the movie want to be able to see it. So we're going to make it available. We just got to format it for, the small screen and do a couple other things.
Yeah, it feels like a required reading for anybody going into the DSO space to understand the history behind it. It was awesome, man. So congratulations on that work. You could tell there was a lot of time that got put into that thing.
I mean, hundreds. Like I started working on that like November of last year, and putting it together, and like November, December, January, February, March. And I'm embarrassed to say this. I mean, I got nervous. I mean, I don't get nervous about the conference, but this is the first conference ever that I had like a movie premiere deadline and we weren't ready. Like literally, we finished this movie 5 days before the conference because we had to fact check and there were a couple typos and we had to go through and fix some stuff. And then we had to have it mixed with the music the right way. And it literally 5 days before the conference it got done. It was causing me just what I felt like it was just like unnecessary stress. Like I don't need this in my life. Like I know how to, but it was my fault for trying something brand new. And in the end, I'm glad I did. I mean, I think the reception has been great, but I don't think I'm going to do another movie like that. It was a lot of effort.
It was well received, man. It's good stuff. What about from your perspective? You talked about being nervous beforehand. I got a chance. I gave you some shoes, right? I think I'm going to make this an annual occurrence to make sure that you have support with all of
I just
weight.
saw those. I like those shoes. You handed them to me because you wanted it for your own self-serving benefit. You want to take a picture and you want to put on LinkedIn. So because, I feel like I'm a good friend to you, even when you do silly stuff, I took the picture and then you put it on LinkedIn and you did that. But my point is, I never got to really see the shoes because I was doing a million things. And just earlier this week, when I got back to Dallas, I opened up the box, and I will say this, I like them. They were very thoughtful. I appreciate the shoes, but you were so quick. Well, we got to take a LinkedIn picture. I mean, ask yourself, is it really a gift if it's like calculated for the LinkedIn picture? Like, I don't know about that, but I will thank you. I enjoy the shoes. They're very, very nice. It was a very thoughtful thing. I like Brooks, so I appreciate it. But, you got your big LinkedIn publicity out of it. I don't know about that, but
I mean, it wasn't necessarily my idea. The HS1 folks, Shar, was like, "Hey, we should just do it inside the podcast room. We can videotape it. We can make a photo." So it wasn't all me just wanting to show the world. And the idea was that you have so much on your shoulders, being one of the most influential people in the DSO space, that you need good shoes, Brian.
I do need good shoes. I mean, for a very practical reason, okay? All that influential stuff, put that aside. I stand more than anybody at this event for like 3 days. And what I found is Brooks shoes just are good for me. People have different things. People like Nike, people like other things. Brooks, prevent me from having like backaches and other things that happen when I stand for like 3 or 4 days. So those shoes will get good use. And yeah, I mean, I have to stand for long periods of time. Now, one thing you did say here, the super vendor conversation in your article, I agree with that. And what I've been saying it a little differently. I think we're saying it the same, like we're saying the same thing, but we're saying it a little differently. I've not used the term, super vendor or anything. If you want to go trademark that or whatever, that's up to you. But what I've said to people is I've used main course and appetizer. And I've said if your technology solution is an appetizer, if it's a really, really, really good, unique appetizer, probably a main course will buy you or something. If it's just a regular sort of appetizer, probably you're going to get, absorbed or knocked out of, it's going to be difficult to compete because what I call the main courses are like PMS systems and things like that. They're just starting to add on all these additional functionalities, and some of the functionalities they're adding on are other appetizers that are going to become obsolete maybe. I mean, I think that's what you mean when you say the super vendor. I mean, the industry certainly, if we put a bunch of DSO CEOs up here and asked them questions, they would say the fewer solutions the better. If you've got one system, like one PMS system that can do 12 things, why would I want to have to tack on 12 additional SaaS-based solution? So it's something to watch. I don't think the PMS systems can absorb every solution out there because there are some that are just really good. Like they're just really good. You got to hand it to them, and there's always going to be a place for those. But there are a lot of things that businesses now, dental technology businesses, that I find like are maybe going to be an appetizer, and they may be obsolete by the PMS systems in the near future. I mean, that is a trend I'm kind of watching.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it a lot. The ability to buy EBITDA is no longer existing. So operational excellence is the way to go. And these stacks are just completely out of control across the entire sector. Tools layered on tools, layered on tools. And I'm hearing from DSO operators that too much complexity now is blocking the ability to have operational
Well, it can. I
execution.
mean, you have to understand there's human beings behind all of this, right? And the staff members that work in DSOs, the clinical and non clinical, they're overwhelmed with other things because there's a shortage of labor generally. And they don't have, like, I'll give you an example of something that I did this week. I was in Vegas for a little break, at my Vegas condo this last weekend. And I have an Omega watch. I really do. And I'll tell everybody, my good friend Haas Saeed from Zumi Management got that for me for my birthday. I love that watch. I want him to take credit because it's one of the greatest watches I've ever had. And I love it. When he gave it to me, Omega had a box. It looked like everybody's got in the car and you see the owner manual and it's like this big, and you can maybe understand it if you pay $125,000 for your car. Yeah, okay, maybe they got to do this because you got driving and consoles and a million different functionality that you could say, yeah, I understand. Not that you're necessarily going to read it, but I understand why a car owner's manual would be like this. For me, I just want to look at the thing, have it look cool, have it tell time. The owners, it's like this thick. I mean, you can dive underwater, you can wind it. So what I've done is over at the Bellagio, which is by my condo in Vegas, I just walk into the Omega store and I hand it to them because it self winds. It's a wonderful piece of, wonderful watch. But sometimes when I like lock it in a safe for a week, like I did at Dykema because I had other things to do, then it stops winding and it stops and all this. I don't have a clue. I would, probably know how to operate the space shuttle before I operate this watch. So I walk into the Omega store and I just hand it to them. I say, look, I forgot to wind it. Can you wind it? And they always try to explain it to me. And it's like, pull this and do this and this lever and then counterclockwise and clockwise. And I'm like zoning it out. It's like I'm hearing, like, remember the Peanuts, like womp, womp, womp. Like I'm not listening to anything they're saying. I'm just
Just
like,
wind the
set it to
watch.
12:30, please. And then they do. And I thank them and, say very kind thank you. And I leave. DSOs are kind of like that with these things. You can't hand overworked staff a gigantic owner's manual or say, look, you got to close this viewer box and go into this, or you got to separately log on to this passcode and get into here, and you got to do this. I mean, there are a lot of good solutions out there that are really value added, but they're too complicated. And the ones that are simpler are the ones that I think are going to win the most business, even if the complicated one works and and it's good. It's just people are short on time, and they're really going to command the simplest sort of thing possible.
Yeah, people behind the products, the problem they're solving, and whether or not they can actually execute on it. And the simplicity in this market, especially, because you're right, the people that are inside these DSOs, like they're putting out fires every day, so they don't want to deal with a bunch of winding that is unnecessary for sure. I second that for sure, man.
I agree with your
You
analysis
agree
of
with
that. I mean,
something?
even look, Matt, even a blind squirrel gets an acorn, and part of your article was very good. I mean, part of it was, and that's the part that I'm watching. I'm watching if the main courses are going to devour the appetizers, and I'm also
Me too.
watching for simplicity because I had, somebody, this happens a couple times a week. Somebody will pitch me on a DSO technology product, and somebody called me 2 days ago about one, and when they were all done, they said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think you're going to have to explain it a lot more simply than you just did." This person on the phone took I almost was toying with interrupting them, but I just, I wanted to give them their time. I didn't want to do that, but it was just too much. It was too much of an explanation, too much stuff. And I said, look, one, and I haven't really done a deep dive on this product. I said, one, we got to figure out whether it is a value add. That'd be number one. If it's not, then, you're dead in the water. But assuming this is a value add, you're going to have to explain it a lot more simpler and a lot quicker than you just did, or nobody's going to pay attention to it. And that's a tragedy sometimes, Matt. If you see a product that is value added, like it's good, but they can't explain it well enough, you snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
You're advising early on when we first started to meet was with a company previously that they ran out of money. And before they were able to they were trying to raise again. I don't know if I ever told you this. What you told us that first day about like focusing on associate compensation was what they were going to focus on 14 months later. So they were going to go back to what you initially told them in the first meeting within an hour to what you said. And it was too little too late. The money was out and the company went under. So listening and making it simple, listening to you is something I advise all companies to do.
I mean, I remember a little bit about that. I thought it was a good concept. It's a shame I know what you're talking about, and that was an
Yeah,
observation I had early on that I felt like would immediately resonate with everybody. And it's too bad they weren't able to like adopt that quickly or
it was an
whatever. But
appetizer. It was an appetizer
yeah.
that ended up being 86th. So it's all good. It put me in a good spot, so no hard feelings there. You were right. I assume let's wrap it up, Brian, but anything coming on the horizon? I know you have smaller DSO leadership events. Are those coming up the rest of this year?
Yeah,
What do
so
you got
we're going
going?
to have a DSO leadership event in November that's, for DSO executives. So we're looking forward, to that. I know you attended, last year. I think we're going to do it in Orlando again and probably have some of our guests drop by. Last year it was Minnie, Mickey, and Donald, but, on their birthday. I'm not sure who's coming this year, but Laura knows, and we'll have a few guests drop by. And I think that'll be a really good event for DSO executives. And, there's a few other, smaller, more regional things that I'm attending this year. But, this is the quiet time. Obviously, August is the quiet time. I know I'm going to the Tower Leadership event in November. I'm looking forward to that one. That's kind of a newer event that I'm, really, really, excited about. I'm hosting again the DSO technology event for Sunset Technologies. Remember isn't it called the DSO Technology Summit or something? But it's great. Sunset Technologies puts it on. It's in Nashville. I'm doing that. I'm doing the Zentis RCM boot camp. RCM's boring but important, really important, even though it's a little boring sometimes. So I'm looking forward to the RCM boot camp. So, some smaller events like that to kind of, finish out the year. But it should be still, these are good events, and it should be a really nice finish to the year.
DSO Tech Summit.
DSO Tech Summit. Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm hosting it. I can't keep all these names straight. The older I get, what everybody calls everything. But yes, the DSO Tech Summit. It's great. It showcases the current state of technology and a focus on cyber protection and other things. I've gone to that event since its inception in 2021, and I'm looking forward to kind of hosting that event. And I think delivering a little keynote address. I'm delivering a keynote address at the Zentis RCM boot camp, which I'm also looking forward to doing. I'm doing a keynote at the Tower Leadership event, in November, which I think is really, really good. So, just some exciting things like that, and then of course our DSO leadership event also in November.
Yeah, quiet time. Quiet time.
Yeah.
I'll see you at RCM Boot Camp. I'll be there as well. So that'll be exciting. And also at DSO Tech Summit.
Yeah, and there's a couple things in October. I can't remember, but there are a couple things going on in October. We'll talk about them maybe as we get closer to there. But yeah, it should be, maybe a little less hectic, but still a nice ending to the year with several value added meetings. And I'm, certainly looking forward to that.
Well, good stuff, Brian. Thank you for giving me a hard time about my article. Congrats on a successful Dykema again. It's the best conference in the business. You do an amazing job. The whole team, Laura and everybody. So I loved it. I don't know
Well,
if you
look,
have to
stay
talk about
humble, Matt. I mean, I know you're a big authority in technology now. I'm proud of you. I want to say that to everybody. And I think you're a trusted advisor to a lot of folks that are trying to adopt technology. But, stay humble with these articles. I mean, you got a little crazy with some of the stuff you said in this one.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll send over for approval next time. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right, Matt. Thanks, everybody. This is the DSO Technology Show.